We have 50. I think people are still coming in. We could give them some few minutes. Have about 58 participants so far.
Can we just give it 2 minutes because we have other people that may want to move on?
Yeah.
I'm sure by the time you do the introduction, maybe people will have joined. We are almost 61 now. Maybe you could just do the preliminaries as before the actual start. Yeah. Okay. In the interest of time.
Should be what else are we expecting? The element we can video not available, right? On the roof? On the yeah. Let me see that. Good afternoon,
Angela, can we start now?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. So proceed, please. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies. Good morning. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Off my screen, sorry. Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Angela Chichancho.
Okay, so
can you see my full screen?
Yes.
We can see you, and we can see what you put on the screen. We can see you very clearly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so we'll start with the housekeeping rules, just ground rules for ourselves to follow during this webinar. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. I would like to, in a special way, welcome you to this important event. It is an event that kickstarts the celebrations of the African Statistics Day. And these are celebrations we're having at the continental level. So as housekeeping, I would like to let every one of us know that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be shared on the event web page. The other is that all our microphones have been muted, but we'll be able to access the question and answer as well as the chat area windows to type our questions and our comments as the speakers and panelists will be giving their deliberations. Please, we're encouraged to participate and ask as many questions in the chat area. And at any time during the webinar, please ask these questions. We will be gathering the questions, and the session of questions and answers, we'll discuss them. And also to let you know that interpretation services are available in both French and English. And so you go to the bottom right and you see a globe-like icon. You click on it and pick or select a language that suits you, whether French or English. So Those will be our housekeeping rules and logistics during this webinar. And just to add that during the webinar, if you experience any technical issues, please feel free to raise them in the chat as well as the Q&A session area or window.
Angela, there are some people speaking in the background. I don't know, maybe it's IT colleagues. If they could just unmute themselves. There's the people speaking in the background.
From my side?
No, I don't know. I think maybe it would be IT people. There's some people speaking in the background. I am not too sure. It could be, or somebody can reach out to IT and tell them to unmute themselves, or mute themselves rather.
Oh,
Oliver, we're trying to identify, but we don't seem to find it here.
Okay.
So it's most probably from Angela's background. We're not aware about that.
Oh,
Okay.
My office neighbor is talking, so probably it's loud. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So that makes it for our housekeeping rules. And at this point in time, I wouldn't like us to spend so much on this. I would like to let us know that this webinar is going to be moderated by the director of the African Center for Statistics. This is Mr. Oliver Chinganya, and I would like to hand over to him right now in the interest of time. Over to you, Mr. Chinganya.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon and good morning, wherever you are, colleagues that have joined on to this webinar. Let me start by, first of all, recognizing a few people that are connected here. First of all, the Honorable Minister of State in charge of Economic Planning in Rwanda, Dr. Wero Claudine, the Chief Statistician at FAO for the UN, my colleague, Pietro Guineri, the heads of statistics at AUC, the acting director of statistics at the African Development Bank, ECA directors that are connected on this particular call. I also want to recognize the voice of the Professor Ben Chiragera, who is going to be a discussant. Director generals here, in particular, also one of the DGs, Professor Anim, who is also going to be presenting, the statistical elders that are connected, young statisticians, may I simply say the distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me welcome you all to this very important webinar, which is part of the continental celebrations or to commemorate Africa Statistics Day, which falls on the 18th of November. The theme for the Africa Statistics Day this year is strengthening data systems by modernizing the production and use of agricultural statistics, informing policies with a view to improving resilience in agriculture, nutrition, and food security in Africa. A call to modernize data systems for the production and processing, dissemination, and the use of agricultural statistics. This webinar is organized by the Africa Center for Statistics in collaboration with the African Union, the African Development Bank, and the FAO of the UN, as you know. It is part of the continental celebration, and therefore I would like to encourage member states to prepare and celebrate the Africa Statistics Day as it is usually done in the respective countries. And it's important that I mention that and sort of repeat that this is basically to kick off the several webinars that are rather several celebrations that are arranged in countries. So this webinar, as said earlier on by my colleague Angela, is intended to kickstart the country celebrations and inspire our thinking. And during our country commemorations on the need to strongly advocate for statistics daily, especially agricultural statistics, given their critical role in shaping the farm economy to more sustainable livelihood. Let me sort of give you a brief background on the Africa Statistics Day. The African Statistics Day was adopted in May 1990 at the UN Economic Commission for Africa Conference of African Ministers responsible for planning and economic development. It's an annual event celebrated on the 18th of November to raise public awareness about the importance and the role that statistics play in the dimension in all dimensions of society, economy, as well as environment. Each year, commemoration of the Africa Statistics Day aims to raise awareness among its decision makers, development partners, data producers and users, academia, researchers, and the public on the importance on Statistics theme. The theme for 22, as mentioned earlier, is aligned to this year's theme at the African Union for 2022, which says 2022, the year of nutrition, strengthening resilience in nutrition and food security on the African continent. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, during this recently 8th session of the Statistical Commission for Africa, the principles and priorities proposed in the draft roadmap for the transformation and modernization of statistical offices in Africa were endorsed and stakeholders urged to support its implementation. Furthermore, stakeholders of the African statistical system were called upon to integrate roadmap principles and priorities in national and as well as regional planning relevant to the development of official statistics. The exponential high demand for data and statistical information to respond to various development agendas and frameworks, namely the National Development Plan, the sub-regional agendas, Agenda 2063 of the African Union, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, has exerted high expectations on the African national statistical system, rendering modernization of systems a necessity. It is not surprising, therefore, that Director Generals of the National Statistical Offices were drawn to select a theme of this year's Africa Statistics Day, focusing on modernizing agricultural data systems for better response to informing policy needs towards a resilient and food secure continent. I'm glad that Africa has put in place the African Group on the Transformation and Modernization of Official Statistics, mandated by the Statistical Commission for Africa, to strategically guide and coordinate work on transformation and modernization of national statistical systems on the continent. There are three priority domains for the transformation and modernization that the technical teams delegated to work to, which include digitalization and integration of data science initiatives, survey methodology and coordination of national statistical system, and statistical legislation, which includes administrative data systems and other sources. As the last 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic demonstrate that pandemics pose major challenges at all levels with a cataclysmic effects on the society, including statistical system. Decision makers from around the world have sought to mitigate the consequences of COVID-19 through the use of data, including data for non-traditional sources. The COVID-19 pandemic was a wake-up call for the data and statistics producers of Africa, as it exposed the vulnerabilities of the African national statistical systems due to weak institutional setup and poor infrastructure to cope with critically needed solutions to decision makers at the appropriate time. In the recent past, we have witnessed the changes in the data ecosystem, which has now become crowded with different actors with varied capacities, and some providing different solutions and technologies. I therefore want to urge all present here today to meaningfully engage the discussion on how modernizing the overall data system within the special attention of agriculture by adoption of digital solutions right from the farms, all through collection, processing, dissemination, use and reuse of agricultural data and statistics will not only transform the data landscape, but ultimately result in better lives of all on the African continent. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this webinar therefore will discuss, among other issues, the experience of Ghana Statistical Service in collecting, processing and disseminating of agricultural data in the context of modernizing the national statistical system, the policymakers' view on the capabilities of the national statistical system to supply agricultural statistics, the results of phase 1 and phase 2 of the fellowship initiative of the Global Strategy for Agricultural Statistics and for Agriculture and Rural Statistics, and monitoring of agriculture and food security related to indicators of SDGs and Agenda 2063. Your presence here today is important because it is in your various capacities, I see a wealth of insights for better refinement of Africa's strategies for digital transforming, beginning with a strong focus on agriculture, the bedrock of this continent. My hope is that together we will accelerate the exchange of ideas towards scaling up of best practices in data and statistics for transforming as well as modernizing of the national statistical systems on the continent. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I am confident that your questions and brilliant ideas will contribute to reinforcing the push for modernizing by digitalization, use of existing, new and emerging technologies and innovation for better lives in Africa. As I conclude, I want just to restate that ECA is committed to support the modernization of statistical systems on the continent in cooperation and working very closely with other partners, including FAO, ADB, and AU, and many others that are also providing support to achieve the transformation that we want to attain in Africa. With that, I just want to wish you a very successful deliberation today. I thank you. I think with that, I would like to continue in this regard to call upon, there's been a few changes that has happened. We should have had our minister being part of this today, but unfortunately the minister has not been able to join us, but she's been very kind to actually send us the video. And this is the minister, a video recording. This is the minister from Rwanda, the state minister in charge of economic planning for the Republic of Rwanda, Her Excellency Uweza Uwerwa Claudine, who is going to have the message relayed through the video that she has sent to us. Can we have that video played, please? Can we have the video for Dr. Uwera Claudine played, Angela? As the message is being, as the video is being put online, I just want to say a few things about her. Dr. Uwera, she has a very vast experience, by the way, in strategic planning with a focus on green economy and environmental evaluation. She has served as a coordinator of the Natural Capital Accounting Program in Rwanda prior to join the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning. She also is previously as a senior lecturer and researcher at the University of Rwanda School of Economics. She has taught over 10 years, so she has really a very good understanding on the work that we do, and in particular, the given that her PhD is actually environmental economics, and that gives us a good understanding as well in agriculture. Angela, can we have the video played, please?
Yeah, our colleagues from IT will be playing the video. So, Mr. Wandoson, please play the video.
Can we have the video played, please?
So if I have institution, for example, email that video, the media.
The Director, African Center for Statistics, Economic Commission of Africa, the Chief Statistician, Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, the Senior Regional Advisor on Statistics, Economic Commission of Africa, the Head of Economic Statistics, African Union Commission, the Director of Statistics, African Development Bank, other directors present, representatives of development partners, representatives of regional economic communities, representatives of statistical training centers, Director Generals of National Statistics Office, statistical elders and young statisticians, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Economic Commission for Africa for inviting me to give this address as a part of celebrating the Africa Statistics Day 2022, which falls of November 18, 2022. I am informed that African Statistics Day is an annual event commemorated to raise the importance of statistics, and that this year the celebration is on the theme, strengthening data system by modernizing the production and use of agricultural statistics with a view of informing policies to improve resilience in agriculture, nutrition, and food security on the African continent. Let me congratulate the joint organizing committee of this webinar, comprising the African Center for Statistics of the Economic Commission of Africa, the African Union Commission, the African Development Bank, and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations for preparing and coordinating this meeting. I understand the meeting has brought together statisticians, policymakers, development partners, regional economic communities, UN country teams, statistical training centers, civil society, the private sector, and the public at large, all to advocate for importance of statistics through the lens of modernization for better development results. Distinguished participants, I'm here today to challenge you to think about your individual contribution to the context of the theme of this year's Africa Statistics Day regarding the extent to which you have embraced digitalization, technologies, and innovations geared to improving your life. Now, think about it. Scaled up at the level of your family, community, national, and continent. Is it that pace and the extent sufficient for Africa to realize the dividends that come with modernization of all aspects of our lives? The theme of this year's African Statistics Day resonates with a subject that I'm enthusiastic about, given my experience in the field. The role of technologies, innovations, and digitalization is a critical enablers in modernizing data systems with special focus on agriculture for better policy, planning, and decision-making in the public sector cannot be overstated. Collectively, at the continental level, the Digital Transformation Strategy for Africa 2022-2030 highlight the need for Africa to adopt digitized solutions faster out of necessity as current technologies point to the scale and speed at which technology is transforming traditional socio-economic sectors. The strategy envisages an integrated and inclusive digital society and economy in Africa that improves the quality of life of African citizens, strengthens the existing economic sector, enables its diversification and development, and ensure continental ownership of Africa as a producer and not only a consumer in the global economy. Dear participants, in the framework of the importance of the African Statistics Day, there is no better time to bring to your attention the critical role of new and emerging technologies in the field of agriculture aimed at increasing productivity. For instance, the World Bank supported climate-smart agriculture, an integrated approach to managing landscapes, cropland, livestock, forests, and fisheries that addressed the interlinked challenges of food security and climate change. Climate-smart agriculture is about weather forecasting, air warning systems, and risk insurance, and seek to highlight changes in the policy that will help farmers adapt to and succeed in combating the ill effects of climate change. Undeniably, our government should adopt ICT and innovation policies, including modernizing all statistical processes as part of furthering digitalization. It's no secret that African countries that have invested in ICT infrastructure and integrated ICT solutions in the economy, societal, and cultural aspects of their nations are transforming the foundations and are reaping the benefits in terms of increased production, real-time access to markets and new ways of doing business. Sectors like financial services that have largely incorporated ICT solutions function better by delivering faster and easier. Developing and modernizing the statistical processes should lead to innovations in statistics and social science research methods for better lives of the citizens. To realize advancements in evidence-based policy design and implementation, more precise and timely robust statistics must be produced at low costs while preserving the quality and privacy of individuals. Statistics are about people, planet, and opportunities. Statistics are about evidence and using it for transforming lives for the better. Statistics should become the basic reference point from which we ground all our policy interventions for better lives of our people. More needs to be done regarding increasing the profile of statistics. So, I call upon stakeholders of the national statistical system to accelerate modernization of the way statistics, including agricultural statistics, are disseminated. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed the fragility of not only Africa's food systems, but also highlighted the need for agile national statistics systems resilient in time of crisis. The pandemic, however, presented opportunities for change regarding how science and technology could help tackle the problem. Back to agricultural statistics. I want to stress that improving such data systems will close existing data gaps by ensuring reliable flow of timely data for informed approaches to advance policy dialogue and policy making towards building resilient systems for sustainable agriculture and, by extension, food security on the continent. For instance, there is still a lack of basic data to measure labor productivity, income levels of smallholder farmers, and the area used for productive and sustainable agriculture, to mention a few. Integration of statistical information and the geospatial component for sound decision-making is very important. The geographic dimension is increasingly being considered as a key for enhancement to virtually all national statistics, as it provides the geospatial framework and structure for collecting, processing, storing, aggregating, and dissemination of statistical data. All the existing agenda, right from the local to global levels, require for new methods and sources of data acquisition and integration approaches to improve the availability, quality, timeliness, and disaggregation of data. About a quarter of the Sustainable Development Goals indicators requires geospatial data, and more than 2/3 can be visualized, especially at various sub-nature scales, if geocoding is included as a standardized component in data collection with existing and new survey tools. I have been informed that today is the World GIS Day. I would therefore add my voice to advocate for integration of the data revolution and the Geospatial Data Revolution agenda harnessed using technology to unlock the vast potential and value of such data used in tandem. I encourage concerted and close collaborating leadership between national statistical and geospatial and Earth observation communities with appropriate frameworks and methods to deliver holistic data for nation to global objectives and aspirations. Ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to congratulate the Pan-African institutions for their unique efforts towards supporting implementation of programs and initiatives like the Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program, targeting elimination of hunger and reduction of poverty by raising economic growth through agriculture-led development. I would also, in a special way, recognize the work that the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and other development partners focused on improving the quality of agriculture, nutrition, and food security data in Africa. I wish to thank Economic Commission of Africa, other Pan-African institutions, and development partners for the critical role they play in training and capacity building for producing agriculture statistics. I also want to express Rwanda's commitment in supporting statistics development both at country and continental level. To conclude, I would wish to thank the Economic Commission of Africa for inviting me to address the distinguished participants of this webinar. I wish you all a fruitful deliberation and celebrations of the African Statistics Day. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Really, that's inspiring message that comes from the Minister of Rwanda in charge of economy and planning, Dr. Uwera Claudine. I think she's pointed out a number of things there, challenges that she's making to us. Just to capture on a few highlights, she's calling upon to eliminate barriers that prohibit actors from using data, and the use of ICT solution to increase access to clarity and interoperability of data as disjointed data systems in the public sector with the different data providers prohibit their effective use of monitoring and policy design. She's also advocating for really harnessing for the, of the integration of data evolution and the geospatial data evolution. Genders using the technology to unlock the vast potential and value of using data such as we have heard, because this is really working in tandem. So thank you so much. We would definitely be able to, perhaps some of you may want to react on that. So without further ado, I would like us to go to the next session and the next presenter, who is supposed to be a discussant to what has been said by the minister. The discussant of this keynote address was supposed to be Professor Ben Chiregera. Unfortunately, Professor Ben Chiregera has a bereavement in the family, so he's not able to attend. And therefore, we have, I'm going to designate a colleague to read a statement in response to the statement by the minister. Those who don't know Professor Ben is a chartered statistician and the chartered scientist of the Royal Statistical Society. He's also one of those that received one of these really prestigious awards of the Mahalanobis International Award, which is really a big achievement and also a good flag bearer on the continent. Professor has been he runs an international consultants. He sits on a different executive boards, and was also part of the founding executive board of Wilbos. Professor too was the first director where I sit here. He was actually the director at the Africa Center for Statistics, and I'm the third. So I'm actually sitting in quite big shoes of Professor. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Angela to go through the statement that has been prepared by Professor himself, and we really want to again wish him well as he attends the funeral within the family. So Angela, please, if you could just respond on behalf of Professor, the statement that he has prepared. Angela.
Thank you very much, Director. These are indeed way much bigger shoes for me to wear, but I welcome them. So I will be reading the discussion of the keynote address on behalf of Professor Ben Chirejera. Verbatim, as is. So the Director, African Center of Statistics, UNECA, the Chief Statistician, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the Head of Economic Statistics, StatAfrique AUC, the Acting Director, Statistics Department of the African Development Bank, other directors of ECA here present, Director Generals of National Statistical Offices, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you may be, or good morning. I want to join the keynote speaker in congratulating the African Center for Statistics at the UNECA, organizing this celebration in conjunction with the African Union Commission, the African Development Bank, and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO. I'm also happy that a keynote address, I'm also happy, I beg your pardon, that a high-level policymaker on economic planning was invited to give a keynote address at this celebration. This is significant for three reasons. First, it has underscored the need for us statisticians to scale up engagements with leadership in our countries to raise the profile of statistics and ensure that statistics is put high on national political and policy agendas. Second, the data resolution we are embracing to improve the African statistical system and the impact of official statistics on the lives of our people requires, among other things, that we mainstream innovations and ICT into our statistics strategies and operations. Third, the invitation of a Minister for Economic Planning from the government of Rwanda is a clear recognition of the strides made by Rwanda in harnessing the data revolution. In case you didn't know it, Rwanda is one country where there is a national policy on the data revolution. If there are any other countries in the world with such a policy, they must be very few indeed. The National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda has established a data science lab, which has been adopted by UNECA as a regional data science hub to build capacity in data science in Africa. And only in August this year, Rwanda demonstrated the effectiveness of automation in field data collection when it successfully carried out her population and housing census using smartphones assembled in the country. We need to congratulate Rwanda for being a trailblazer and thank the Honorable Minister for making an insightful address that has highlighted innovative solutions to some key data challenges we face in Africa. These challenges include high data production costs, quality data, data management, data dissemination, and use, especially for policy planning and decision-making in all sectors of national development. A lot of the time, we data producers talk to ourselves more than we talk to users of our products. As you can see from this address, there is a lot of mileage we get from engagements with high-level policymakers and other data users. We are now in a new data-driven world where data have become ubiquitous. There is explosion of new types and uses of data. Data are now a prerequisite for many government functions, and indeed, data are becoming an integral part of the daily lives of many people everywhere. This is therefore important that data create greater value for development by improving public policies, programs, and service delivery, prioritizing use of scarce resources and targeting them to reach marginalized populations and areas, as well as driving economies, more business opportunities and jobs, and higher market efficiency. Holding governments accountable by civil society and citizens, and empowering citizens to make better choices through more information and knowledge. It is therefore important to maximize data impact on national and international development. This can best be done through the data revolution. The 2020 World Bank Development Report titled Data for Better Lives captures this impact thus. Like many general purpose technologies such as the steam engine and electricity, the transformations emerging from the data revolutions could touch all aspects of society and economies. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this year's African Statistics Day celebrations is strengthening data systems by modernizing the production and use of agricultural statistics with a view of improving resilience in agriculture, nutrition, and food security on the African continent. I thank the keynote speaker for underscoring the importance of the agriculture sector to development of African countries south of the Sahara. I also want to emphasize that agriculture is the key to economic growth, increased incomes, a better standard of living, poverty eradication, and increased food security in these countries. No wonder many sustainable development goal indicators relate to agriculture. It is for these reasons that in 2003, the African heads of state and government adopted an Africa-owned and Africa-led initiative, namely the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program, to assist African countries to revitalize agriculture growth as a strategy to combat poverty and hunger. The agriculture sector has also been included in the list of statistical development priorities for Africa by all Pan-African institutions. The aforementioned importance of agriculture, of the agriculture sector, demands that its planning, management, and monitoring be based on sound evidence. This in turn requires the sustained availability of comprehensive, reliable, up-to-date, and consistent statistical data. In addition, these data need to be in a form that renders them accessible, intelligible, and practicable for a variety of users. However, agricultural statistical systems in many African countries have for a long time been weak, uncoordinated, insufficiently resourced, and essentially unsustainable. Further, their outcomes have by and large been inadequate in terms of scope, quantity, quality, and dissemination. It should be noted that recent investments in agriculture statistics have helped African countries to improve and also increase their capacities to produce good quality agriculture data. These investments have come about by the design and implementation of the Action Plan for Africa for implementation of the global strategy for improving agricultural and rural statistics. The Action Plan has helped countries improve agriculture statistics through institutional development. And this is with reference to statistical planning and capacity building through trainings, development of infrastructure, methodologies, and best practices, and data management, including data dissemination. Published reports from the African Development Bank about the implementation of the said action plan show that overall score on the agricultural statistical capacity indicators increased by 9.4 percentage points from 46.6% in 2013 to 56% in 2017. For purposes of peer learning and South-to-South cooperation, the reports show that Ethiopia emerged as the country with the highest level of development of the national agricultural statistical system and had an agricultural statistical capacity indicators score of 66.5% in 2013 and 78.8% in 2015. It should also be noted that while only 22 African countries participated in the 2010 round of World Census of Agriculture program, this number is expected to increase to 33 for the 2020 round, thus improving the supply of structured data on agriculture, on the agriculture sector. Ladies and gentlemen, there is increasing demand for location-based data and information about places, people, human activity, business, economic growth, well-being, and hence a recognition of the value of linked socioeconomic information to location. Hence, the necessity pointed out in the keynote address to integrate statistical and geospatial information from geocoding to statistical maps as a basis for sound and evidence-based decision-making. There is already a statistical geospatial integration forum established by the UN Statistical Division and supported by the UN Statistical Commission that brings together actors and experts to consider the delivery of integrated, timely, reliable, and quality statistics to support, track, and inform on progress of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. African countries should participate fully in the work of this forum. In this context, it is worth noting that in Namibia, the National Statistics Act has provided for spatial data infrastructure as an integral part of the national statistical system. There are lessons to learn from Namibia on this subject. Finally, only recently, UNECA and other Pan-African institutions hosted a joint meeting of the 8th Statistical Commission for Africa, Regional Community of the United Nations, Global Geospatial Information Management for Africa, and experts of 6th session of the Conference of African Ministers responsible for civil registration. The overarching message from the meeting was that African statistical systems need to reinvent themselves or itself through transformation and modernization to make it more resilient, agile, and responsive to the ever-increasing demand for good quality official statistics. The said transformation and modernization need to be underpinned by innovative solutions, largely driven by advances in ICT, as well as acquisition of strategic knowledge and skills in new areas such as data science, artificial intelligence, and machine language that are defining the fourth industrial revolution. The keynote address has strengthened the rationale for the said innovative solutions. In this connection, a roadmap for transformation and modernization of official statistics in Africa was unveiled at the said meeting. This roadmap should be finalized, taking into account previous homegrown initiatives and frameworks for improvement of official statistics in Africa. Once again, let me thank the Economic Commission for Africa for organizing this celebration and for inviting me to discuss the keynote address. I wish the African statistical community good celebrations of the African Statistics Day. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Angela, reading that statement on behalf of Professor Ben Chiregera. We really appreciate his usual wisdom and also recognizing and acknowledging the work that the UN is doing together with the Africa, the Food and Agriculture Organization. Now, we have come to the end of the first part of the segment of this particular webinar. As you have seen from the program, we actually have a number of speakers today. We have 4 presentations that are going to be laid out, and each one of them will be provided about 10 minutes to actually give their own thoughts in terms of the presentation. And then thereafter, it will be a moderated session. I'll have a few questions that I would like to ask the presenters. But before we get there, because I know one of the presenters is also running out of time, but before we get there, I would like us to perhaps reflect on one more thing that we have done, and this is the logo that was prepared for the Africa Statistical Day. What we did that we asked young statisticians to design the logo itself, and out of that there was a panel that was selected to select the best logo for the Africa Statistics Day, which we would like to keep. So that jury has finally made a decision, and they arrived at the winner, Mr. Gilbert Havasa, a young statistician from Uganda. Havasa is a senior research and population and development consultant limited based in Kampala. He was previously a fellow of the IUSSP, the Scientific Panel on Population Perspectives and Demographic Methods to Strengthen Civil Registration. He has such an elaborate, resume, so to speak, because he also holds a Master's of Science in Population Studies from Makerere University. So I would like to congratulate really Mr. Gilbert Havasa. But before then, maybe we could show the audience and view this logo before we get into the next segment. Could we please show the logo? Can we put it in bigger slide, in the slide mode, please, presentation mode? As they put that presentation mode, I'm going to ask Gilbert if you could just maybe the 2 minutes, if you want to sort of make help us understand what this logo is all about. Could you just take us through, Gilbert? Put your screen on so that the people can actually see and appreciate the work that you did for this. So that's the logo that was designed by Gilbert. Gilbert, can you just come on the screen and tell us the meaning of this logo before we move on to the next? You have 2 minutes, please. We can't hear you, Gilbert.
The IT people need to unmute him for him to.
Can you unmute Gilbert, please, so that he can speak? Gilbert? IT colleagues, can you unmute Gilbert, please, to speak? We need him on for 2 minutes. We are running out of time. We need to get next speaker to speak, please. We are having problems to get Gilbert, but I think let's give Gilbert a round of applause for that. And really an excellent thing. I think what we shall do is that we'll ask Gilbert to do a write-up to explain the features that we see on that logo. So without further ado, I would like to move on very quickly. One of the presenters, oh, Gilbert, are you there? Are you able to quickly tell us, please?
Yes, yes.
Could put
yes.
the logo, Gilbert, 2 minutes, please. If you have 2 minutes, just tell us what the features mean on that logo. Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Gilbert Havasa. I will thank the Africa Team Program for choosing me and the Director Generals. So as you can see on the logo, statistics helps us as African in our day-to-day decisions. The black circles represent the African folks. So these people you can see in black, they are raising their hands and voices to show the whole world that Africa has recognized the importance of statistics. And they are using one of the ways, not necessarily with drums, but also their voices. The young statisticians, the old, and everybody can use their voice, mouth, I mean, to raise awareness on the importance of statistics. So the graphs are actually, the graphs represent statistics which is generated at country and regional level for decision making and economic development. And you also see some blue color, and this represents the nature and the abundant water resources in Africa that require us to measure its utilization for the attainment of the sustainable development goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gilbert. You can see that in the chat, people passing their congratulatory message to you for this well done job, really. Thank you so much. So colleagues, without further ado, I want to move on. One of our colleagues, Pedro Guinari, he has to go to another meeting and we have actually delayed a little bit. Pedro is going to make a presentation. If I may just say a few words about Pedro. Pedro, I did mention earlier on, he is the head of the FAO, Chief Statistician for FAO since 2012. But prior to that, he served as Director of Statistics Division at FAO, and he ensures that the coordination of FAO statistical systems by fostering the consistency of the overall statistical program to work and ensuring the implementation of statistical standards and best practices. So he has over 30 years of experience, professional experience in this area of official statistics, managing statistical programs, both at national and international level. And before then, he also worked for the Italian National Statistical Institute and also for the the UN Regional Commission and Asia Pacific in ESCAP. So without further ado, over to you, Pedro.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Oliver. Excellencies, distinguished representatives of the African organizations, Director Generals of National Statistical Offices, dear colleagues. At the outset of this presentation, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the Economic Commission for Africa, and in particular to the Director of the African Center for Statistics, Oliver Cingania, for inviting FAO to collaborate in organizing the celebration of the African Statistics Day 2022 in partnership with the African Development Bank and the African Union Commission. The theme of this year is central to FAO's mandate and explain the keen involvement of my organization in co-organizing this important event. Agricultural and food security statistics are indeed key in the fight against hunger, malnutrition, and poverty in the African continent. And the topic of my presentation today is the capacity of African countries to monitor the food and agriculture related SDG indicators under FAO custodianship. So let me begin by highlighting that the objective of strengthening data system by modernizing the production and use of agricultural statistics is at the basis of FAO's approach to support countries produce and utilize high-quality data for informed decision-making. This approach guides all FAO's work on SDG indicators related to food and agriculture, which cover a wide range of statistical domains and data sources, touching on the social, economic, and environmental dimension of sustainable development. To collect these indicators, countries can use administrative sources, agricultural and household surveys, agricultural censuses, as well as geospatial data. FAO then collects the data and indicator values produced by countries, mainly through dedicated questionnaires, make them internationally comparable, and publish them on global databases. A key point I would like to highlight today is that food and agricultural related SDG indicators are not an isolated subsector of national statistics. Therefore, strengthening countries' capacity for reporting on food and agricultural related indicators hinges on the modernization of the entire national statistical system. Thus, a systemic approach is essential for building a strong evidence base for policy advice and interventions on issues of critical importance to the African continent, such as food security, nutrition, and sustainable use of natural resources. Let me recall here that FAO is one of the largest custodian agencies for the global SDG indicator framework, with 21 SDG indicators under its custodianship and contributing to 5 additional indicators. These indicators span over 6 goals, and in particular goal 2, 5, 6, 12, 14, and 15. From this chart, we can see that significant progress has been made over the last 5 years, both globally and by the African continent, on reporting data for these 21 SDG indicators. You can see that although Africa at the onset lagged slightly behind the rest of the countries in the world, it has accelerated its reporting and now has overtaken the global average. This chart provides a breakdown on individual country progress on reporting the 21 SDG indicators under FAO custodianship, combining both the current status and the progress made over time. So what are the main findings of these two charts? First, that concerted efforts in Africa have led to positive progress above the global average, and especially with respect to other regional groupings, such as the small island developing states, which still have a very low reporting rate. It is evident, however, that the favorable aggregate regional reporting rate masks huge variation in individual countries' performance, hence requiring our continued efforts to support and build capacities, especially in countries that lag further behind. In particular, the countries that in 2017 showed a lower reporting rate are also the ones that have managed to achieve the smallest progress in disseminating the FAO-related SDG indicator over the last 5 years. At the indicator level, compared to the world average, African countries lag behind the availability of data for plant genetic resources, conservation, livestock breed populations or biodiversity indicators, and goal 14 indicators concerning fishery and marine resources. In addition, there is still no data on sustainable agriculture, which is a very important indicator. We therefore need to continue our efforts in data collection to facilitate effective monitoring of progress toward the SDG targets related to food and agriculture, sustainable agriculture, and the sustainable use of natural resources. I would like now to briefly elaborate on some of FAO initiatives supporting agricultural statistics and SDG monitoring in Africa. Since the adoption of the 2030 Agenda, FAO has supported countries address issues of agricultural data scarcity, inaccessibility, quality, and comparability to promote more effective agricultural programming and policies. FAO Statistical Capacity Development Programs support a systemic approach, as highlighted in my introduction, not only by training countries in the specificity of each SDG indicator methodologies, for example, but also addressing cross-cutting issues affecting the entire national statistical system. For example, FAO has provided support for the establishment of several new cost-effective tools for data collection, like software for computer-assisted personal interviews, integrated agricultural surveys, geospatial data, and machine learning tools. FAO has also continued to invest in improving data dissemination, analysis, and use of SDG indicator for decision-making. And for instance, FAO will implement in 2023 a new program to support countries in developing their voluntary national reviews. One of our flagship capacity development initiative is Measuring the SDG program, which covers all SDG indicators under FAO's mandate, focusing on methodological development on one side and on the provision of dedicated training and technical support to countries on the other. Complementing a range of other more indicator-specific projects, the program has increased several countries' statistical capacity and ability to report on various SDG indicators, with just a few examples of success stories that are highlighted in these slides, and I'm not going to cover in my presentation for the sake of time. Another important initiative is the Global Strategy to Improve Agricultural Rural Statistics, a multi-phase framework for modernizing statistics, supporting developing countries to produce and utilize basic agricultural data and information. The second phase of the strategy, underway since 2021, focuses on strengthening the overall capacity of countries to implement complex integrated agricultural surveys. It complements other data collection efforts already underway in African countries, and in particular facilitates the implementation of the 50 by 2030 initiative in eligible countries, which I will discuss in the next slide. The strategy seeks to provide training and technical assistance at various levels, but has a special focus on Africa. Now, moving to the 50 by 2030 initiative, which is a partnership initiative between the World Bank, FAO, and IFAD. And it aims to collect data in 50 low-income and lower-income, middle-income countries by 2030, thus bridging key global agricultural data gaps. And in particular, it supports the collection of data that can help report on a number of SDG indicators listed in this slide. And it's currently implemented in a number of African countries like Ethiopia, Malawi, Mozambique, Mali, Senegal, Tanzania, and Uganda. Other examples of FAO collaboration in Africa with various partners on SDG monitor include the FAO AfriStat collaboration on analyzing agricultural surveys to measure productivity and incomes of smallholders, which is implemented in Burkina Faso and Mali, as well as working with countries to enhance agricultural surveys for increasing the coverage of SDG indicators in future rounds of these surveys. In Lesotho, FAO has brought together a group of experts from the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Forests and Rangeland, and the Bureau of Statistics for the purpose of developing the Lesotho Atlas and the Soil Information System to improve country data on SDG 15 indicators, which are related to forestry. A series of workshops has been conducted for NSOs on indicator 5A1, which improves data on women access to land. The workshop covered the official methodology and the use of existing survey data in many African countries, like the demographic and health surveys, to produce the indicator. Some 80 participants from various African countries attended a series of webinars since August 2022. And in 2022, FAO also stepped up its engagement in the AUC biennial review process of the Malabo indicator framework. Many Malabo indicators, in fact, are equivalent to the SDG indicators under FAO custodianship. And a key aim in this case is therefore to help countries align their reporting under both frameworks in order to reduce the reporting burden for countries. Last but not least, FAO has helped numerous countries in Africa collect food insecurity scale data through large national population survey. In 2022, for example, FIES data were published for 46 African countries, 25 of which produce estimates on the prevalence of food insecurity based on national surveys. Finally, let me also highlight that this year FAO has developed a regional roadmap for SDG monitoring in Africa, which covers various areas of engagement, including developing the statistical capacity of staff in FAO country offices and UN country teams working on SDG monitoring, working to ensure that data and statistics are seen as development outcomes and are mainstreamed in programmatic document as the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, which is signed between the UN country team and the governments, national government. Supporting the improvement of census and surveys with a view to expanding the collection of SDG indicators. Mobilizing financial resources at national level, so countries do not depend entirely on global donors for the implementation of national statistical priorities. And lastly, the roadmap recognizing regional partnership with the AUC, UNECA, and African Development Bank, as well as other sub-regional organizations like AFRISAT, as crucial to effectively supporting statistical activities and SDG reporting in countries. Work on the implementation of this roadmap is already underway, and we look forward to stepping up our collaboration with all relevant stakeholders and partners in 2023. To conclude, I would like to reiterate some key takeaways from my presentation. First of all, high quality data for food and agriculture is essential for effective policy formulation and monitoring on issues of food security, nutrition, resilience building, and natural resource management. A systemic approach is needed to improve the production and use of SDG indicators within a broader effort to modernize the entire national statistical system. Third, while data availability across Africa is increasing, data gaps in key indicators and some countries still constrain the continent's ability to design and implement targeted intervention to combat food insecurity and improve sustainable agriculture. Fourth, FAO looks forward to continuing its engagement with national and regional partners to enhance data collection and reporting for SDG indicators, ensure alignment with national and regional statistical frameworks and development programs, and further promote the use of data for evidence-based decision-making. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pietro, for that. I know you're rushing, so I'm not going to attempt to summarize what you have said, but I think you do highlight very key issues in your summary as takeaways, which I think we would put at the back of our minds as we discuss this afternoon. But before you leave, Pedro, you only have a couple of minutes. I want one little question I was going to ask you is that could you please, beyond the decade of action, where do you see African countries in relation to the quality of agricultural statistics produced in the framework of the innovation and digitalization of agriculture? Where do you see Africa going?
Well, there are many aspects. I have highlighted some of them. One key area is, of course, the use of geospatial information. I think that we have a very important opportunity here that was reinforced by the latest meeting of the Regional Commission for Africa. And other areas, of course, concern the use of big data, other source of information, which can help to bridge the data gaps that are currently available, because there are a number of countries that are not conducting their agricultural surveys on a regular basis, and most of the agricultural surveys or their agricultural censuses are quite limited in their scope in terms of what type of information they collect. So there is a need to improve these surveys and improve the rely on additional data sources that can provide the information that is needed for informing evidence-based decision-making.
No, thank you very much, Pedro. I know you're running out of time. So we're going to let you go. You've got 15 minutes. I hope you'll be able to make it to your next meeting. But thank you so much, Pedro, really for coming and joining us at this particular session. We appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you for inviting.
And thank you, Pedro. All the best with your meeting. Colleagues, I would like us to go back to our program now. As you noticed, there were things that had to be moved around to accommodate people that were leaving, but also to ensure that we are able to get what we need in the sequenced fashion. So I would like to go back to the program before we continue the program and invite our colleagues, if I may get them ready, the colleagues from the Africa Development Bank and colleagues from the African Union to also deliver very, very brief remarks before we get to the next presentation. Again, apologies to the whole team. Is the reason we did doing this is because we needed to catch up given the long speeches that were there, and also to give opportunity to Pedro, who has to move into another meeting in the next couple of minutes. So if I could have colleagues from the African Union to deliver their remarks, please. African Union.
Merci, merci Monsieur le Président, et merci, chers collègues. Je vais être bref, comme vous l'avez dit, pour présenter cette réunion. C'est mon speech de l'Union africaine. Chers directeurs généraux des instituts des INS, chers représentants de nos partenaires au développement et statistique, chers représentants des communautés économiques régionales et sous-régionales, chers représentants des sociétés civiles et des organisations non gouvernementales, chers représentants des écoles de formation et statistiques, chers représentants des institutions de recherche, mesdames et messieurs, je ne peux oublier la ministre du Rwanda qui nous a fait un très bon speech. Le système statistique africain, c'est ça, sous l'impulsion de l'organisation panafricaine telle que la CIA, la Commission de l'Union africaine et la BAD, célèbre le 18 novembre la 32e édition de la Journée africaine de la statistique. La célébration de la Journée africaine de la statistique de 2022 est le fruit d'une collaboration continentale organisée sous la direction de la CIA, de la BAD et de la Commission de l'Union africaine. Mesdames et messieurs, la statistique officielle joue un rôle de plus en plus grand dans nos sociétés et nos administrations publiques. Les statistiques de qualité sont désormais abondantes aux échelons national, régional, continental et même mondial. Elles servent couramment à informer les débats publics, la formulation politique et la prise de décisions cohérentes. Mesdames et messieurs, les bureaux nationaux des statistiques font office de coordinateurs nationaux, notamment en traduisant les outils promotionnels dans les langues nationales et en organisant des événements et des manifestations sensibles à l'échelle du continent. Rappelez-vous aussi qu'au niveau national, la statistique officielle contribue au développement dans de nombreux secteurs particuliers de l'économie, ainsi que de la démographie, de la société, de la santé et de l'environnement. En outre, la collaboration remarquable qui existe depuis longue date entre le système des statistiques nationaux et le système des statistiques africains a par ailleurs conduit à la formation d'un système de statistiques régional, continental et mondial, dont les membres parlent le même langage, afin de mettre en commun leur expérience et de promouvoir la statistique officielle régionale, continentale et mondiale. Plus loin, reconnaissant la coordination des statistiques et d'indicateurs fiables et opportuns, les pays est indispensable pour prendre les décisions éclairées et suivre la mise en œuvre des objectifs du développement durable. Le 18 novembre de chaque année, les pays africains célèbrent avec joie la Journée africaine des statistiques, JAS, dont le but est de sensibiliser le public sur l'importance de la statistique dans le développement économique et social de notre continent. Mesdames et messieurs, la Journée africaine des statistiques occupe une place de choix dans l'agenda des statistiques de notre continent depuis maintenant plus de 3 décennies. Cette journée offre l'occasion aux autorités statistiques de rappeler à l'opinion publique nationale, régionale et continentale et internationale les efforts qui sont les nôtres en matière de production, d'analyse, de diffusion de données fiables et actuelles. Elle offre également l'occasion aux producteurs et aux utilisateurs de données de se retrouver autour d'un thème, un message fort à l'endroit des responsables politiques, administratifs, de la société civile et du secteur privé, et généralement en lien avec l'actualité du continent. Pour ne pas monopoliser la parole, Monsieur le directeur, Monsieur le Président, le thème retenu pour cette édition 2022 est renforcer le système de données en modernisant la production et l'utilisation des statistiques agricoles. Comment mieux accompagner la politique et améliorer la résilience de l'agriculture, la nutrition et la sécurité alimentaire en Afrique. Ce thème est en corrélation avec celui de l'Union africaine pour l'année 2022, qui est intitulé « Renforcer la résilience en matière de nutrition et de santé alimentaire sur le continent africain ». Renforcement des systèmes agroalimentaires, des systèmes de santé et de protection sociale pour accélérer le développement du capital humain, social et économique. Ce thème a été choisi pour sensibiliser les décideurs, les partenaires techniques et financiers, les producteurs et utilisateurs de données, des chercheurs et le grand public à l'importance des données statistiques sur les statistiques agricoles et aussi sur les statistiques de la nutrition. Chers directeurs généraux, mesdames et messieurs, pourquoi des journées continentales ou internationales? Pour répondre à cette question, souvenez-vous que chaque journée continentale ou internationale représente une occasion d'informer le public sur des thèmes liés aux enjeux majeurs, comme les droits fondamentaux, les statistiques agricoles, le développement durable, la nutrition, etc. Ces journaux sont aussi l'occasion pour le système statistique africain, les décideurs de nos États et la société civile d'organiser des activités de sensibilisation et de mobiliser des ressources en faveur du développement statistique et d'autres secteurs majeurs. Pour finir, Monsieur le Président, chers directeurs généraux, mesdames et messieurs, la Commission de l'Union africaine, en collaboration avec la Banque africaine de développement, la Commission économique des Nations unies pour l'Afrique et les communautés économiques régionales, a mis en œuvre la stratégie pour l'harmonisation des statistiques en Afrique, le SACHA2, pour permettre à l'Afrique de produire ses propres statistiques harmonisées, fiables et de qualité pour la planification, le suivi et évaluation de l'agenda 2063 et de l'agenda 2030 pour le développement de l'Afrique. Cher Monsieur le Directeur, Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs, je voudrais, avant de terminer mon propos, au nom de son Excellence Dr Moussa Faki Mahamat, Président de la Commission de l'Union africaine, remercier tous les participants qui ont bien voulu répondre favorablement à cette invitation de cette journée statistique africaine 2022. Je voudrais réitérer l'engagement ferme de la Commission de l'Union africaine à accompagner les pays africains dans la production et l'harmonisation des statistiques sur le continent. J'en appelle à une collaboration fructueuse avec nos partenaires. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention. Merci.
Thank you very much, colleagues. The colleague from the AU is the head of economic statistics at StatAfrique. His name is Mr. Adum Galulu. So thank you so much for those very inspiring message from StatAfrique. We really appreciate this collaboration. I think that's what makes us strong to be able to work together as partners, the Africa Development Bank, AU and ECA in this particular endeavor. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our colleague, the acting director at the Africa Development Bank, acting director for statistics, Louis Kwaku, to also give remarks before we go to the main presentation. Louis Kwaku, please.
Thank you, Oliver. Je voudrais d'abord saluer le soutien et l'engagement pour la statistique africaine de la ministre d'État en charge de la planification économique de Rwanda, Dr Ouira Kodi. Merci pour votre excellent message. Mesdames et messieurs les représentants de la Commission de l'Union africaine, de la CEA et de la FAO, chers partenaires au développement, chers représentants des communautés économiques régionales, des organisations sous-régionales et des centres de formation statistique, mesdames et messieurs les responsables des bureaux nationaux de statistique, chers membres du système statistique africain, distingués participants, tout protocole observé, mesdames et messieurs. Au nom de la Banque africaine de développement et à mon nom propre, je suis ravi de vous accueillir tous à ce webinaire régional organisé pour célébrer la journée africaine de la statistique 2022. Cette journée s'inscrit dans le cadre des activités festives en cours et constitue un précurseur de la célébration principale de la journée, ici au 18 novembre. Je vous remercie d'avoir accepté de participer à cet événement important malgré votre emploi du temps chargé. Mesdames et messieurs, la Journée africaine de la statistique est un événement crucial pour les acteurs de l'écosystème des données. C'est une occasion en or accordée au système statistique africain pour sensibiliser le public au rôle important que joue la statistique dans tous les aspects de la vie économique et sociale. En effet, permettez-moi à ce stade d'affirmer en toute confiance que la statistique est un élément indispensable dans le processus de planification et de prise de décision. Mesdames et messieurs, il est donc réjouissant de constater que le thème de cette année est également en phase avec l'un des domaines prioritaires du top 5 de la BAD, Nourrir l'Afrique. Actuellement, l'intervention de la banque est orientée vers la transformation agricole. Les opérations de la composante Nourrir l'Afrique mises en œuvre par la BAD et achevées en 2021 ont eu les impacts suivants. 3,7 millions de personnes bénéficiant d'améliorations dans l'agriculture, dont 1,6 million de femmes, 1386 km de routes de desserte construites ou réhabilitées et 9500 hectares de terres bénéficiant d'une meilleure gestion en eau. Mesdames et messieurs, permettez-moi de me référer à une citation faite par le président de la BAD, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, en 2015. Il dit ceci: il n'y a absolument aucune raison pour que l'Afrique soit une région importatrice nette de nourriture, dépensant plus de 35 milliards de dollars pour importer de la nourriture. L'Afrique doit se nourrir elle-même et l'Afrique doit devenir une puissance mondiale dans l'alimentation et l'agriculture d'ici 2020. D'ici fin 2025. Fin de citation. Par conséquent, alors que nous commémorons cette année la Journée africaine de la statistique, nous, dans le monde des données statistiques, devons réfléchir au thème et envisager la meilleure approche pour améliorer la disponibilité des statistiques officielles de qualité. En effet, le système statistique africain doit être efficace et efficient pour jouer un rôle clé dans la promotion d'interventions fondées sur des preuves pour l'agriculture, la nutrition et la sécurité alimentaire. La Banque, en collaboration avec la Commission de l'Union africaine, la CEA et d'autres partenaires au développement, s'efforce de renforcer les capacités statistiques des pays africains. Ceci est également conforme à notre engagement en tant que l'une des agences d'exécution de la stratégie d'harmonisation des statistiques en Afrique, Chassa 2. À cette fin, la Banque soutient les pays africains par le biais du programme de renforcement des capacités statistiques SCB5, exécuté par le secrétariat de COMESA, qui couvre l'assistance technique dans divers domaines statistiques, notamment les statistiques agricoles. 37 pays africains et communautés économiques et régionales peuvent bénéficier de ce soutien. La composante statistique agricole du SCB5 s'appuie sur l'enquête sur les besoins techniques menée par la Banque en collaboration avec les pays africains. Cela faisait partie des évaluations nationales visant à établir des indicateurs de capacité en matière de statistiques agricoles dans la région. Mesdames et messieurs, nous collaborons avec d'autres partenaires au développement afin de fournir une assistance technique aux pays d'Afrique pour la compilation des bilans alimentaires. Ces bilans permettent de générer deux indicateurs importants liés aux objectifs de développement durable: la prévalence de la sous-alimentation et l'indice de perte de nourriture. La Banque aide les pays africains à adopter des technologies telles que les entretiens personnels assistés par ordinateur CAPI. Une assistance technique est également fournie pour les systèmes de statistiques sur les coûts de production agricole, la construction de bases de sondage principales pour les enquêtes agricoles et la compilation de l'ensemble minimum de données agricoles de base. On assiste aussi les pays dans la conduite des recensements et enquêtes agricoles. Mesdames et messieurs, nous devons également rapprocher les statistiques des personnes qui en ont besoin pour la planification décentralisée et du public, qui sont les principaux fournisseurs de données. La production de données statistiques sans leur diffusion n'est pas utile dans cette génération de révolution de l'information. À cet égard, la Banque a développé l'autoroute de l'information en Afrique, une plateforme de données ouverte visant à accroître l'accès aux données et aux informations pour la conception des politiques et la prise de décision. C'est là que l'ensemble minimal de données agricoles de base est publié. Nous vous invitons à le consulter et encourageons les DG, les chefs des bureaux statistiques nationaux de statistiques à veiller à ce qu'ils soient régulièrement mis à jour. Enfin et surtout, j'exprime notre reconnaissance à la CEA pour avoir coordonné l'organisation de cet événement très important aux côtés de la Commission de l'Union africaine, la BAD et la FAO. Je remercie également tous ceux qui y ont participé. Ensemble, célébrons la journée africaine de la statistique aujourd'hui. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Louis, for again a very inspiring message there from the Africa Development Bank, elaborating a number of areas that you are engaged in. I will not attempt to summarize. We are running out of time. I know that the next speaker also is pressed with time. The next speaker, colleagues, is Professor Samuel Kobin Anim, the head of statistics at the Ghana Statistical Service, but is also a professor of economics at the University of Cape Coast. Currently serving as the government statistician for Ghana. As you know, this is one of the countries that really made a big change in transforming the statistical system, particularly doing the census that they conducted very recently. So at the leadership of that, he has geared towards the specificities in terms of user satisfaction through expansion of the scope and diversity of statistics in national as well as international. Anchoring the pillars of the national duty in the last 3.5 years has been really a change, automation, and newness. So with further ado, really, I would like to ask our professor to take us through the next presentation. Professor, please, go ahead. Sam, you're there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, Oliver. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you what we are doing in Ghana, but Oliver, I'm going to do slightly of modernization. I really want us to ask the question, how do we contextualize the motivation to modernize? I pretty much appreciate the global consensus on why we need to modernize. I appreciate the intuitive and the theoretical justifications for modernization, but I want to emphasize on why there is the need to spend a lot of time in contextualizing why you need to modernize. So I'll quickly walk you through which and sources of agricultural statistics that we have in Ghana, and then narrow down on the things that I talked about, what we've been doing lately to contextualize the modernization. So I'll share with you how we've gone beyond the release of our consumer price index and demonstrate why we need to focus on certain agricultural statistics. And one of the things that we've been pushing lately has to do with the stocks of grains. I'll touch on what I believe that most of us would want to hear in terms of the automation, the modernization, especially from the perspective of increasing the scope of agricultural statistics and the way we disseminate it to get there. I'll touch on something briefly which has to do with food security and nutrition to challenge our minds as national statistical offices on why we need to be careful in the generation of these statistics. I'll end off with how we are going about it with our Ministry of Food and Agriculture. And the last point that you see italicized, I'm not going to talk about it, but just to mention that we've initiated conversations with Digital Earth Africa on how to use geospatial resources to estimate crop production in Ghana. So in terms of the last 5 years, we've had a dearth of data when it comes to agricultural statistics. And I want to emphasize the fact that whatever we've done is more of the demand side of agricultural statistics. And what I mean by that is issues around food security, nutrition, more of what individuals and households need. And this is so because this is what donors are interested in, and that is how they've driven us to conduct our recently comprehensive food security and vulnerability assessment study, where we came up with a WFP measure of food security. And recently, we've relied on FAO for the use of the FIS, that is the Food Insecurity Equivalence and Experience Scale, in the computation of food security. But really, when you look at the supply side, where you want to think about surveys, as was talked about by our colleague from FAO, especially the 50-20-30 approach and the census of agric, until 2017, we had a drought of agricultural censuses for as long as 33 years. Until 2017, the last time that we collected agricultural census was 1984. And over that period, there was no agricultural census, and we did one in 2017. Going forward, I'm not too sure how we're going to mobilize resources to do that, but this is clearly a conversation that has to be strategized in a different way to ensure that it is done every 2-3 years after our population and housing census as our law demands. And then again, on the surveys that we've done, as I indicated earlier on, is focused mainly on the demand side rather than the supply side. Obviously, we've used administrative data from the Ministry of Food and Agriculture to inform our GDP. But the conversation that I want to share with all of us now is that we need to go beyond that and putting out agricultural subsector data to inform our GDP, but also to address some of the challenges that we have in our respective countries. So on this slide, what I try to do is to demonstrate how we go beyond the release of CPI and consumer inflation to motivate why we need to modernize agricultural statistics. So in Ghana, in the basket for the computation of consumer price index and consumer inflation, we have 307 items. And anytime in the last 6 months since our CPI rate of inflation started soaring, I believe that Ghana is one of the countries with the highest consumer inflation, and for that matter, food inflation. We currently have a consumer inflation of 40.4% and food inflation of about 43.7% in our last October release. So since the last 6 months, anytime we put out the headline figure, we feel the need to disaggregate the figure from a food, non-food perspective, but more importantly, identify the items that have seen an increase. So we put out this headline slide, which I think a lot of my colleagues do, but then go beyond that and identify the top 20 items, keeping in mind that food has the highest weight of 43.7%. Identify out of the top 20 items, the number of these items that are food and non-food. And from our last release, we identified that of the top 20 items, 70% of them, that is 14 of them, are food-related items. Then we said to the Ministry of Food and Agriculture that what we are seeing, one will say that is not consistent with an increase in the crop production that we are seeing. So we need to begin to look at price variations rather than the headline figure. So what I'm showing here is just one item in terms of imported rice that we have, and demonstrating across 3 different time periods: 2018 when it was relatively stable, 2020 during the COVID-19 era, and 2022 when we have the Russia invasion of Ukraine, and demonstrate the price variability of just one item within one geographical area in times where we have instability and in times that we have stability, and make an argument that there's a possibility of some behavioral elements that we need to look at when we're talking about prices. So the conversation around stocks of grain has gained momentum to the point that now the Ministry of Food and Agriculture is embarking on an exercise of transporting food grains from places where we grow them to places where we are in need of them. And again, on this slide, we are showing the variability across 4 different time periods, but from a regional point of view. So after motivating the need why we need to modernize agricultural statistics in Ghana, we at Ghana Statistical Service approached the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, and currently we have a draft agricultural statistics dashboard, which essentially is looking at prices beyond Ghana Statistical Service. And this is where the issues of harmonization, interoperability would have to be thought through, because we are collecting data on consumer prices, but the ministry has data on wholesale prices, which we can compare and see whether it is the build-up cost that is making the change. So from a dissemination point of view, on this slide that we are just about finishing building it, it's showing you the prices that we are getting from the ministry's point of view. And going forward, I'm going to share that slide with you in terms of how we are progressing. Colleagues, again, what this slide is doing is going back to the stocks of grains that I talked about, because once we put out the fact that we see a lot of price variations across different geographical areas and across different time periods, we needed to demonstrate in terms of, for different agricultural products, where do we have them in terms of yields? So on the dashboard that we've built, if you pick a commodity like rice, you see where we have the dominant yield. If you pick a commodity like cassava and maize, you see how they vary in terms of their yield across different areas. So moving forward, we can think about issues around post-harvest losses, intermediaries, and how they add to the build-up in the final cost that consumers end up paying when they're on the market. The other issue that I thought it will be helpful in our conversation as National Statistical Offices is really interrogating the agricultural statistics that we are producing. And just as an example, as I indicated in my first slide, from the WFP point of view, we have the Comprehensive Food Security and Vulnerability Assessment. We did that the first time in 2009, which was nationally representative. In 2011, we got support again from World Food Program, but the support was limited. So we did in a very limited area in Ghana. And the FAO approach, which is the FEAS approach, which is internationally comparable, comes with less cost. We've been doing it regularly in the past 5 or so years. As national statistical officers, the key question that we need to ask ourselves is, across these two methods, what is responding to what we need as a country? Because to a large extent, one can argue that the WFP approach is relatively more of an objective way of looking at food security compared to the the FAO approach, which, as I indicated, is based on 8 questions, easy to administer, but the level of subjectivity in there is relatively higher. So we had to rethink what policymakers need. And then we came up with what we call the triple burden households and individuals, because policymakers are always thinking about, why do you have high food insecurity in Ghana, 49.4% in the second quarter of 2022, and you talk about a consumption expenditure of 23.4%, and you talk about an unemployment rate of 13.9%. So the connections between agricultural statistics and other statistics is critical. And that goes back to my point on how we need to contextualize the motivation for modernizing your statistics. So we came up with this triple burden households and individuals concept when we're doing our annual household income and expenditure survey, and picked up on households that have unemployed people in their households that have poor in terms of their consumption expenditure, that are poor from the multidimensional poverty point of view, and also households that are food insecure, so that policymakers can really think the connection between agricultural statistics and other key statistics. And this is why I feel that the whole conversation around modernization should be based on a context. What is the issue in your country and why you need to modernize? I would end off by sharing these 5 pursuing an MOU. And one of the things that we did, or we are about finishing, is to review the entire agricultural data system. Colleagues, let's keep in mind that if you invest $1 in a data system, the returns is $32 on the average, but it ranges between $7 to $73. And this is where, as a continent, as individual countries, you need to ask yourself, in which data system are you investing in and how are you investing in? The second thing that we're doing with the Ministry of Food and Agriculture is to have that sense that the collaboration is not just between the two institutions. Nutrition is the duty of the Ministry of Health. So we need to find a way of bringing that ministry in. We are bringing in the Ministry of Trade and Industry, because if you want to see a reduction in your prices, it's your trade vulnerabilities, your trade balances, your trade agreements on the commodities that you import. So we need to bring on board the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Then once we've brought together all of them, 2 issues that we need to do before we think about IT systems, which in most instances, it drives the conversation on modernization, is how we harmonize the processes of data collection across the different institutions. Because if we are going for data on agric from the ministry, the approach that they use is not a census. They use surveys, they do crop cutting. How we equate these methods, we need to harmonize it. And Oliver, I'm happy you talked about the issue of data and interoperability, procedures, and responsibility. So these are the 4 areas that are feeding into our MOU with the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. And once that is agreed, once we know the responsibilities of all the stakeholders, we now would be driven on how the IT systems would have to be built. Thank you very much, and I'm hoping to engage further on the issue of the geospatial if time permits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Again, you can see, colleagues, what is going on in Ghana, and particularly the issue of digitalization. I like this part about the investment. I think Professor will have to engage you on maybe a little bit more on when you invest $1 in data, the returns of it. I think that's the way we should be looking at things. So we thank you very much for that presentation. But Prof, I also know that you have another engagement. I don't know how much time you have. I could perhaps ask you a question before you leave, because we want to really benefit from you. Is that okay if I can ask you a question, Prof?
Yes, please, Oliver, please go ahead.
Yes, please, because we might not have the time to do that during the discussion. So, Prof, in the context of modernizing, Africa's national statistical systems and beyond, what are the issues, challenges, opportunities that very specific to the production, the processing, and as well as dissemination and use and reuse of agricultural statistics? What do you see are the challenges and opportunities in the production and reuse of agricultural statistics?
Thank you, Oliver. I would have to go back to the main point that I raised, and that main point is the way NSOs work with the sector ministries. I think that conversation has not deepened enough. I'm not too sure about what is happening in other countries, but in our case, it is clear that that conversation between the statistics department within the ministries and the national statistical offices is very superficial. And what I mean by it's very superficial is that issues of data sharing has not really been thought through. So we don't know at what point the data from the sector ministries would end and where would it take off for those within the national statistical offices. The opportunity that we have now is take advantage of the current global challenges. I mean, all of us have been affected in the same way. All of us have soaring food prices. And this is the time we need to ask ourselves, where do we have the buildup? In some other countries, the buildup will be from what you produce within the country. So that is what you need to tackle. But in other countries, the buildup will be the middlemen in terms of what happens with storage, transportation, marketing, and the potential behavioral part of hoarding. So it behoves on us as individual countries to really understand what is accounting for the food prices that are soaring across the continent and the globe.
Thank you very much. And this is very true about the data sharing. In fact, the situation is even worse when you talk about the private sector. The data sharing between the public and private sector becomes really a challenge because there are no mechanism at the moment. And so for some reason also as public, particularly official statisticians, are somehow averse to having a conversation with the private sector because of issues of trust, privacy, and so forth. So these are things, I think, as you say, we need to deal with in the global atmosphere. We need to really deal with some of these challenges. So, Prof, thank you so much. But if you still be available at the end, we'll come up with the different questions to sort of engage you a little bit more based on your presentation that you have made. So thank you so much. Colleagues, we'll go to the next presentation before we open the floor. And that presentation is going to be made by Prof, can you just put your picture again? I think the team probably would like to take a picture of you before you leave. If you don't mind, just for a few minutes, please, if you could just do that. I think the team is trying to take a picture of you. I'm also trying to take advantage of you being here. It's good to see you. Yeah. So so the next presentation is going to be from Mr. Adrissa. Adrissa Ndiaye is the current director of the National School of Statistics, École Nationale de Statistics Analyse of Economic in Senegal. He is also the current president of the Conference of Directors for the African Schools of Statistics, CODESA. Adrissa, the floor is yours, please, to address the group that is here.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Oliver. Je suis ravi de pouvoir partager l'expérience de l'École nationale de la statistique et de l'analyse économique Pierre Ndiaye, ENSA de Dakar, sur les résultats des phases 1 et 2 du programme de bourse de la stratégie mondiale pour les statistiques agricoles et rurales sur la production et l'utilisation de statistiques agricoles. Je voudrais d'abord remercier la CEA de nous avoir associés à cette importante activité de lancement des Journées africaines de la statistique. Alors, la présentation reviendra sur 4 points principalement. Les éléments de la phase 1 du programme de bourse qui est entièrement déroulé, les résultats de cette phase 1, puis les éléments de contexte de la phase 2 qui est en préparation et qui va démarrer ce mois de décembre avec un programme de master en statistique agricole dont on reviendra sur le dernier point. Alors, je parlerai donc du cas spécifique de l'École nationale de la statistique et de l'analyse économique Pierre Ndiaye, dont je suis le directeur par intérim, qui a eu à bénéficier effectivement de ce programme. Donc, l'École nationale de la statistique et de l'analyse économique est une école nationale à vocation régionale qui accueille chaque année une quinzaine de nationalités et qui forme des ingénieurs statisticiens économistes, des ingénieurs des travaux statistiques, des analystes statisticiens et qui s'active également dans le renforcement de capacités des statisticiens en place au niveau des systèmes statistiques nationaux africains, notamment et également du secteur privé. Donc, dans la première phase, le programme de bourse était dédié aux étudiants qui se sont spécialisés en statistiques agricoles. Donc, les formations que nous menons au niveau de l'ENSAE et des autres écoles qui sont membres de ce qu'on appelle le réseau des écoles de statistique africaines offrent à la dernière année de formation ce qu'on appelle des voies de spécialisation. Les étudiants ont la possibilité, à partir des fondements de base en statistique, en économie, en informatique, de se spécialiser soit en statistique, soit en finance, en actuariat, en économie, etc. La bourse donc concernait ceux qui sont spécialisés en statistique agricole. Il s'est agi également d'un appui en équipement informatique, notamment par l'achat de tablettes pour la collecte de données. Et ces tablettes sont notamment utilisées dans le cadre des enquêtes pédagogiques que nous organisons chaque année qui sont déroulées par les étudiants. L'ENSAE, je le disais tantôt, est membre du réseau des écoles de statistique africaines avec l'école d'Abidjan, l'ENSEA, et l'école de Yaoundé, l'ICEA, et l'ENSA est également membre du groupe africain des centres de formation en statistique. Donc, je le disais tantôt, la formation, le programme de bourse concernait dans la planification les ingénieurs des travaux statistiques et les ingénieurs statisticiens économistes. Après, dans l'exécution, ce sont les ingénieurs des travaux statistiques qui ont eu à bénéficier de cet appui. Donc, c'était 15 000 $ par étudiant répartis sur toute la durée de la scolarité. Donc, les ingénieurs des travaux statistiques sont formés sur 4 ans après un baccalauréat scientifique. Donc, au niveau de la spécialisation statistique agricole, 40 ingénieurs des travaux statistiques ont été formés entre 2015 et 2019, ont été formés sur les traitements et l'analyse des statistiques agricoles et rurales et sur l'économie agricole. Donc, ils ont suivi une formation sur 3 ans sur les bases des pratiques statistiques, sur les compétences en informatique et en analyse économique. Ensuite, lors de la dernière année, ils ont eu à avoir une spécialisation sur le traitement et l'analyse des statistiques agricoles et rurales. Donc, ces 40 ont eu à suivre cette spécialisation, dont 5 ont eu à bénéficier du programme de bourse. Donc, le taux d'insertion de ces 40 formés, c'est de 100%. Alors, tous les 100 étudiants sont occupés, donc occupent des emplois. Les secteurs d'activité, c'est notamment au niveau des instituts nationaux de statistique, où ils sont recrutés. Au niveau du Sénégal, c'est la Direction générale de la planification, de la prévision et des études économiques. Dans d'autres pays, certainement des directions semblables. Il y a également l'Institut sénégalais de recherche agricole, qui s'active dans la recherche. Il y a la FAO et il y a International Food Policy Research Institute, entre autres. Donc, à la place de faire une enquête récente, exhaustive, des 40 qui ont eu à subir la formation, j'ai plutôt recouru aux méthodes de nos amis journalistes et j'ai quand même, étant donné le timing, interrogé quelques sortants qui ont eu à partager leur expérience, donc ce qu'ils ont eu comme activité professionnelle depuis leur diplomation dans ce programme. Donc, nous avons par exemple Amsata Nya, un jeune Sénégalais, qui a travaillé juste après sa formation à la FAO et à Freestad en tant qu'expert en statistiques agricoles. Alors, c'était sur un projet commun, FAO à Freestad. À partir de 2019, il a été consultant à Rome en statistiques de production, du commerce et des statistiques alimentaires. Et depuis 2020, il est statisticien en statistiques agricoles en Éthiopie. Il y a aussi un exemple, un jeune Malien, Ali Digiba, qui a d'abord travaillé dans une ONG avant d'être depuis 2018 à l'Institut de statistique du Mali, INSTAT. Et la particularité de Ali, c'est qu'il est lauréat pour le programme de bourse de la phase 2, dont nous parlerons tout à l'heure, et qui offre la formation d'un master en statistique agricole. Donc, comme je le disais tantôt, les ITS sont formés sur 4 ans, c'est un bac plus 4. Donc, le master 2 en statistique agricole leur permet d'avoir un niveau académique plus élevé, un bac plus 5. Deux autres exemples pour finir avec ces retours. Abdourahmane Sy, qui a d'abord travaillé au niveau de l'Institut sénégalais de recherche agricole, sur les enquêtes agricoles notamment, qui a ensuite travaillé au port autonome de Dakar et qui maintenant travaille dans un centre de recherche international, International Food Policy Research Institute. Le dernier exemple, c'est Samba Sissé, diplômé en 2017, qui a travaillé à l'Institut sénégalais de recherche agricole. Ensuite, au niveau de l'Institut de statistique du Sénégal, ANSD, Agence nationale de la statistique et de la démographie. Il a ensuite été consultant à la Banque mondiale et aujourd'hui consultant à la FAO. Donc, c'est quelques exemples que j'ai voulu donner pour illustrer un peu le parcours que nos étudiants d'habitude suivent au-delà de leur formation. Donc, ici, nous allons revenir sur les éléments de la phase 2. Donc, contrairement à la phase 1 où ce sont des étudiants de nos formations initiales, les ingénieurs des travaux statistiques qui bénéficiaient de la bourse, cette fois-ci, il s'agit de faire bénéficier de la bourse d'étudiants du master, donc le master en statistiques agricoles, qui est un master 2 de 12 mois. Donc, c'est toujours une bourse de $15 000. Pour ce qui est de l'ENSAE, 12 lauréats ont été choisis originaires de 6 pays. Donc, originaires de 6 pays, nous avons le Bénin, la Guinée-Bissau, Madagascar, Mali, République démocratique du Congo, Togo. Alors, ces pays ont été choisis et les candidats sont orientés à l'ENSAE. D'autres pays sont affectés à l'école d'Abidjan. Et donc, comme je le disais, c'est un master sur 12 mois. Donc, chaque pays a présenté des candidatures et la commission mixte des écoles et de la FAO, de la CIA ont travaillé pour, selon les critères prédéfinis, choisir les candidats. Le master, pour ce qui est de l'ENSAE, est également organisé en collaboration avec l'Institut sénégalais de recherche agricole, logé au ministère de l'Agriculture et de l'Équipement rural du Sénégal. D'accord, ceci dans le but de permettre une harmonie entre justement ce qui se fait au niveau de cet institut et la formation, faciliter également le recours à des spécialistes dans certains domaines, également travailler sur un programme de stage et également travailler sur la pérennité du programme. Donc, préciser effectivement que le programme de master est ouvert à d'autres candidats donc, qui ne bénéficieraient pas de la bourse accordée dans le cadre du programme. Donc, l'ouverture d'un master en statistique agricole répond à ce besoin de formation de cadres statisticiens spécialisés dans le domaine des statistiques agricoles. Le master en statistique agricole porte sur la production et l'analyse des statistiques agricoles et rurales, sur l'analyse économique des secteurs de l'agriculture, mais aussi de l'environnement. Donc, elle a comme cible les statisticiens et d'autres spécialistes agronomes qui travaillent sur les données agricoles, qui travaillent sur la production, sur le traitement et sur l'analyse des données agricoles. Donc, l'objectif de ce master est de former des professionnels capables d'assurer l'élaboration, la mise en œuvre et le suivi des politiques publiques relatives à l'agriculture et à l'environnement. Alors, je terminerai par ce slide qui donne un peu quelques aspects des compétences qu'offre le master. Donc, c'est de concevoir des questionnaires et réaliser des enquêtes au niveau des exploitations ou des exploitants agricoles ou environnementaux, de collecter des données par le biais d'enquêtes auprès de divers fournisseurs tels que les collectivités locales, les organisations professionnelles, ainsi que divers établissements, en utilisant notamment les moyens modernes de collecte, tels que la collecte par drone ou par satellite, d'effectuer le traitement et l'analyse des données, de pouvoir procéder à l'interprétation et à la diffusion des résultats sur divers supports, de concevoir des projets et mettre en œuvre des politiques publiques de développement durable, par mobiliser des techniques quantitatives de traitement des données, statistiques, économétrie, analyse des données et de modélisation bioéconomique, afin de participer au développement de la connaissance à travers la recherche. Voici, mesdames, messieurs, monsieur le modérateur, les éléments que j'avais préparés pour partager avec vous sur le programme au niveau des phases 1 et 2. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much again, Adris, for that wonderful, speech that you've given us in terms of the work you are doing at the school. Clearly a demonstration of real results. The students that you have showed us on the screen, some of them doing very tangible work on the content. So thank you so much. I hope you will stay up to the end, because it would be nice that we can ask the question to you. Please stay on to the end of this particular webinar, so that we can have a conversation with you. Without further ado, I would like to go to the next presenter, Mr. Alexander Bayu. Is a professional expert from the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock and Fisheries of Benin, in charge of coordinating national census of agriculture and director of agriculture statistics. As he has taken several international consultations broadly, and also between 2020 and 22, conducted diagnostic analysis of the national statistical system. And prior to that, he was also Director General of INESA in Benin between 2011 and 2018. So he's a very versed statistician, economist, engineer with over 20 years of professional experience conducting various operations in statistics, including social and demographic statistics as well. So may I just give the space to you, Alexander, to take us through your presentation? Alexander, please. Alexandre.
Ok, merci Oliva pour votre introduction, et je voudrais vous remercier. Peut-être partager mon écran d'ici alors. Excusez là. Donc, je voudrais vous remercier, et notamment la CEA, pour la commémoration de cette journée africaine de la statistique, et saluer la Commission de l'Union africaine, la FAO, la BAD, pour leur implication dans l'organisation de cette journée. Monsieur le directeur des INS, monsieur le directeur des statistiques agricoles, distingués invités, je suis honoré de partager le point de vue des décideurs politiques sur la capacité des systèmes de statistiques agricoles à fournir des statistiques pour la prise de décision. C'est vrai que je ne suis pas un décideur politique. Peut-être que mes fonctions anciennes ont certainement permis de me rapprocher des décideurs et de pouvoir partager un peu leurs sentiments par rapport au système de statistiques agricoles. Mes propos vont être discutés à travers 4 points. D'abord, nous allons partager un peu un état contextuel des systèmes de statistiques agricoles. Ensuite, nous allons discuter autour des capacités des systèmes statistiques pour vraiment pointer mes propos autour des perceptions. Enfin, nous inventorions quelques réponses par rapport à ces éléments de perception des politiques. Il faut savoir que les politiques, c'est eux qui ont la décision, c'est eux qui ont à charge l'opérationnalisation du développement. En termes conceptuels, il faut le dire, l'agriculture, c'est un secteur majeur pour l'économie et c'est à juste titre que la CEA et les partenaires associés ont choisi ce domaine pour célébrer l'importance des statistiques. C'est un secteur important, d'abord parce que l'agriculture dans les pays africains, c'est le secteur qui concentre la plupart des actifs. C'est le secteur qui assure la subsistance et la sécurité alimentaire. Et c'est le secteur qui est, en termes de contribution au PIB, en moyenne, c'est 30% du PIB dans l'ensemble des pays africains. Et si l'on regarde un peu l'agro-industrie et l'approche chaîne de valeur, l'agriculture est quand même en amont de tout le processus de production, aussi bien au niveau de l'agriculture, de l'agro-industrie et bien dans d'autres processus de commercialisation. Donc, c'est un secteur important. Aussi important parce que c'est l'agriculture aussi qui génère pas mal de recettes d'exportation. En moyenne, dans les pays africains, c'est pratiquement près de 50% des recettes d'exportation. C'est donc un secteur important d'avoir une bonne connaissance des faits. Et donc, les statistiques agricoles sont donc très importantes. Et c'est une bonne chose de pouvoir pointer le thème de cette journée sur les statistiques agricoles. Ce qu'on doit savoir, c'est qu'avant les années 2000, l'offre statistique était vraiment limitée, avec un déficit de qualité et peu de programmes de renforcement des capacités au niveau du secteur agricole. En comparaison aux statistiques des prix, statistiques économiques, et statistiques démographiques, qui ont bénéficié d'une attention en termes de concentration des appuis au niveau, aussi bien au niveau régional qu'au niveau international. Et les statistiques agricoles étant marginalement appuyées. Donc, c'est un peu la situation qu'on avait au niveau avant les années 2000. Et après les années 2000, il y a eu un peu comme une prise de conscience mondiale sur l'amélioration des statistiques agricoles. Donc, il y a eu pas mal de programmes d'appui qui se sont concentrés sur les statistiques agricoles, au nombre desquels on peut citer rapidement au niveau de la FAO, le programme de recensement mondial, il y a l'initiative Country Stats, et la stratégie globale pour l'amélioration des statistiques agricoles. Et je voudrais saluer Pietro, qui a déjà pointé ces initiatives. Et il faut même indiquer certaines qui continuent déjà. La Chassa, qui est le cadre continental, a un grand pan pour les statistiques agricoles. Et le programme détaillé de développement de l'agriculture africaine, à travers les déclarations de Maputo et de Malabo, ont mis un accent particulier sur les statistiques agricoles. Aujourd'hui, l'initiative 50-2030, c'est une initiative qui renforce les capacités des pays africains dans la production des ODD. C'est donc un peu comme une révolution, une prise de conscience mondiale pour tacler la question des capacités au niveau des statistiques agricoles, ce qui est d'ailleurs une bonne chose. Et c'est à juste titre que ce thème vient aborder ces questions. Les capacités des pays en matière de statistiques agricoles, nous, pour en parler, nous faisons référence à une évaluation exhaustive que la FAO a réalisée pratiquement en 2018. Il y a eu vraiment une enquête sur 193 pays en ligne et au niveau des pays africains, 32 pays ont participé à cette enquête. Et cette enquête nous a permis d'avoir un certain nombre d'enseignements et un certain nombre de révélations en termes de capacité des pays africains au niveau des statistiques agricoles. Et c'est vrai que ces capacités sont évolutives, mais la situation de 2018 est une cartographie qui nous permet d'avoir une bonne idée de la situation des pays africains. Ce qu'on peut retenir, c'est que d'abord, la majorité des pays africains n'effectuent pas régulièrement les enquêtes agricoles, qui constituent la source de base pour la production des indicateurs dans le secteur. On peut utilement constater que seulement 18 pays ont effectué une enquête agricole au cours des 5 dernières années. C'est quand même une situation assez inconfortable pour générer des indicateurs de qualité. On peut également constater que les sources administratives, les sources de données d'enquête complétées aux sources administratives pour la compilation des indicateurs des ODD ne sont pas satisfaisantes. Donc, on a vu tout à l'heure, lors de l'exposé de Pietro, que le niveau de production des indicateurs des ODD dans les pays est certes évolutif, mais reste encore faible. On peut aussi constater, à travers cette évaluation, que 28% des pays africains n'ont organisé aucune enquête ménage au cours des 5 dernières années. Enquête ménage, c'est quand même une source importante aussi pour enseigner certains indicateurs des ODD dans le secteur agricole. Nous avons un autre élément d'enseignement, c'est que la plupart des pays africains ont un niveau de sollicitation d'assistance technique très élevé, ce qui est signe un peu d'une faiblesse des capacités dans les pays. Donc, c'est quand même, il faut apporter vraiment face à ce tableau relativement sombre, des réponses appropriées pour garantir une offre statistique de qualité. Mais ça, c'est une vue technique. Qu'est-ce que les politiques, les décideurs politiques pensent des systèmes statistiques agricoles? Les politiques n'ont pas une vue assez lointaine des systèmes de statistiques. Et ce qu'on peut remarquer et ce qui est satisfaisant, c'est que les politiques sont unanimes sur l'utilité, la nécessité de disposer de l'information statistique de qualité au niveau du secteur agricole. Donc, il y a 2 vocables importants, les statistiques de qualité et la mise à disposition à temps réel dans le secteur agricole. Ça, les politiques sont formelles là-dessus et le disent. Les références pour ces informations, ces perceptions, c'est les stratégies nationales de développement statistique des pays africains. Actuellement, la production des SNDS est pratiquement généralisée dans les pays. Et dans ce processus, nous remarquons dans ces documents, le point de vue des politiques est affirmé et sur la nécessité de disposer des statistiques de qualité. Il y a quelques pays qui ont eu l'heureuse initiative de produire des enquêtes de satisfaction auprès des politiques, des rapports de certaines sessions de dialogue producteurs-utilisateurs. Et parmi ces utilisateurs, ils ont approché quelques hommes politiques et cela a permis d'avoir des éléments de perception sur les politiques. Et les points d'insatisfaction que les politiques ont exprimés, c'est d'abord que les données au niveau du secteur agricole ne couvrent pas tout le secteur. Nous voyons par exemple, si l'agriculture semble être le secteur où l'offre est dominante, mais les secteurs comme l'élevage, les sous-secteurs, l'élevage, la transhumance pour lesquels il y a beaucoup d'attention actuellement en Afrique de l'Ouest, où il y a beaucoup de crises de transhumance, les catastrophes climatiques, la sécurité alimentaire, la pêche, la foresterie sont des sous-secteurs où il y a très peu d'évidence dans le secteur. Les politiques, dans leur formulation de discours, dans leur intervention, manquent d'évidence pour ces sous-secteurs. Les politiques ont également affirmé des insatisfactions par rapport à l'actualité et à la régularité. Donc, l'information, lorsqu'elle existe, n'est pas actuelle. Et la production ne s'inscrit pas dans une dynamique de régularité permettant de voir les évolutions. Ça, c'est important. Ça aussi, c'est un point d'insatisfaction exprimé par les politiques. Les politiques également ont aussi pointé du doigt la faible utilisation des technologies dans la diffusion de l'information. Donc, le recours à des technologies pour une bonne visibilité des informations statistiques dans le secteur n'est pas observé. Le secteur agricole, c'est comme le secteur où c'est l'absence de modernité. Donc ça, c'est une perception, parce que l'agriculture, c'est vraiment le champ, c'est vraiment là où on n'a pas la modernité. Et je pense que c'est une perception qui, quand même, appelle des actions. Et les politiques ont également, et finalement, c'est le dernier point de perception, émis quelques observations sur la fiabilité des informations livrées. Pendant que certains pensent qu'il y a des présomptions sur la vraisemblance en termes de sous-estimation, d'autres pensent même qu'il y a des surestimations, même des tendances à critiquer l'indépendance des techniciens qui produisent ces chiffres. C'est donc des perceptions qui regroupent des points de satisfaction, mais des points d'insatisfaction, mais qui appellent un certain nombre de réponses que nous, les techniciens, que aussi les partenaires qui nous accompagnent doivent pouvoir apporter pour que les politiques puissent être dans la même mouvance d'une bonne utilisation des chiffres. Donc, quelles sont les réponses qu'on peut suggérer? C'est d'abord de renforcer les cadres d'échange et de dialogue entre producteurs et utilisateurs de statistiques agricoles, notamment avec les politiques. Il faut qu'il y ait quand même beaucoup de cadres d'échange pour que les concepts, les résultats, les contraintes même de production puissent être partagées et puissent être taclées. Ensuite, il est important de privilégier l'approche demande au niveau des techniciens pour satisfaire les utilisateurs, parce que les points d'insatisfaction sont nombreux, mais ce n'est pas insurmontable. Je pense que les techniciens doivent revoir la philosophie de production, la philosophie de travail, dans leur plan de travail, dans leur plan de diffusion et dans leur plan de communication. C'est important. Ensuite, nous pensons qu'il faut renforcer la mise en place des plans stratégiques avec une vue réaliste. Je pense il faut faire des plans stratégiques réalistes au niveau des services de statistique agricole avec une bonne visibilité sur leur financement. Il est important de travailler aussi à régler les questions de structuration institutionnelle au niveau des directions des statistiques agricoles. Les INS ont beaucoup travaillé là-dessus, mais en même temps, le secteur agricole, c'est un secteur où il faut vraiment travailler à une bonne structuration institutionnelle pour que les questions d'indépendance, les questions vraiment de structuration puissent être réglées de façon à ce qu'il y ait une grande confiance des politiques au système de production. Il y a nécessité d'avoir des plans de travail assez cohérents, un calendrier de publication qui permet d'assurer la régularité et qui force aussi les techniciens à assurer une production de statistiques. Il est important de noter qu'il faut poursuivre et renforcer les capacités du personnel des directions statistiques dans les pays africains. Parce que dans pas mal de directions statistiques, vous avez un nombre de statisticiens très réduit. Vous avez parfois du personnel non statisticien appelé à s'occuper de la production statistique. Bien entendu, c'est ce faisant qu'on peut renforcer la qualité dans le processus de l'activité statistique. Et bien entendu, il faut finir par le plaidoyer au niveau régional et au niveau des gouvernements pour que la prise en charge financière de la production statistique soit vue comme une activité régalienne des gouvernements. Il est important aussi de voir la coordination au niveau du secteur agricole. Le secteur agricole, c'est un secteur assez vaste. Il y a plusieurs pans. Et donc, il faut renforcer au sein du secteur la coordination et faire un pont avec le système statistique national. Il est important qu'il y ait une bonne cohérence avec le système statistique national à travers les comptes nationaux, à travers les recensements généraux de la population et aussi à travers l'utilisation d'un certain nombre d'outils. La cartographie du RGPH peut être utilisée avec beaucoup de pertinence au niveau de l'agriculture, vice-versa, et même le développement des outils modernes au niveau des INS peut être répliqué au niveau des services de l'agriculture pour que, in fine, la production statistique puisse vraiment répondre en termes de qualité, en termes de quantité et en termes de pertinence, de façon à ce que les perceptions négatives des hommes politiques puissent vraiment devenir favorables. Donc, c'est sur ces éléments de réponse que je voudrais conclure mon exposé en remerciant la CEA et ses partenaires pour la commémoration de cette journée. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Alexander, for that, again, a very elaborate presentation on the work that you do. I know we are running out of time, but I would like to ask a question to you, Alexander, as part of follow-up before opening up the floor to others. And I also ask the same to Adrissa. So first to you, Alexander, since you are still holding the mic, how can data producers better leverage technology, research, and innovation with respect to delivering timely and reliable agricultural statistics, given what you have told us today?
Oui, pourriez-vous répéter la question? Je n'ai pas bien entendu. Quelques difficultés techniques, s'il vous plaît.
Okay. Okay, I'm happy to do that, Alexander. So the question is that how can data producers better leverage technology, research, and innovation with respect to delivering timely and reliable agricultural statistics?
Oui, c'est une très belle question. Je pense que ce qu'on peut déjà faire déjà au niveau du secteur agricole, c'est déjà de pouvoir exploiter un certain nombre d'innovations. D'abord, la collecte digitalisée. Et ça, c'est important de le faire. Et il y a aussi la digitalisation des exploitations agricoles. On peut commencer par les grands exploitants agricoles et doivent pouvoir être, leurs exploitations doivent pouvoir être cartographiées, numérisées et les terminaux peuvent être déposés dans les exploitations agricoles de façon à avoir des renseignements au niveau central de façon systématique au niveau de ces exploitations. Et on peut récolter un certain nombre de paramètres à partir de ces exploitations de façon automatisée, et ce qui permet déjà de faire une bonne prévision déjà au niveau de la production agricole à partir des grandes exploitations. Et il y a aussi la possibilité déjà aussi de pouvoir, à travers la collecte numérisée et en utilisant aujourd'hui beaucoup de progrès faits par les INS. Aujourd'hui, dans le système CAPI, il faut pouvoir le généraliser au niveau du secteur agricole. Tout ce qu'il y a aussi comme innovation en termes de système de dissémination pour la visibilité. Aujourd'hui, tout ce qui a été produit au niveau des INS mérite d'être appliqué dans le secteur agricole pour la diffusion de l'information statistique. Il est important aussi de voir comment on peut mutualiser les efforts avec les INS, et notamment les INS font les recensements généraux de la population, font les enquêtes ménages plus rapidement que dans le secteur agricole. Comment pouvoir introduire des variables dans les différentes questions pour mutualiser les efforts et pouvoir assurer une production de façon régulière de certains indicateurs. Je pense que ces initiatives peuvent renforcer un peu une production abondante de statistiques et aussi en utilisant la modernisation. Je pense que c'est un peu ça.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you so much. And I know this is, we can go on. It's very, very important subject that we are discussing today. Adrissa, let me also draw your attention, if you just put your mic on, and I would like to ask a question before we close. Adrissa, how can statistical training centers, including statistical schools and departments in universities, catalyze the push for innovation in the measurement of agriculture and livestock for better impact in the statistical system in the context of fellowship program of the Global Strategy on Agriculture and Rural Development? I don't know if you'd like me to repeat that question now, Adrissa. Adrissa, you're still there?
Oui, c'est bon.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup pour la question, Monsieur Oliver. Je pense que c'est une question très, très pertinente.
You're muted.
Allô, c'est bon? Is it okay?
Please go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
OK. Donc, merci beaucoup, Monsieur Oliver, pour cette question. Alors, effectivement, les écoles de statistiques africaines essayent de s'adapter par rapport aux mutations qui sont notamment observées dans le métier de la statistique, avec les nouvelles sources de données, avec les...
Looks like the speaker is frozen. Adrissa, you are frozen. You're probably having challenges in Senegal. Yeah, so unfortunate that Adrissa is frozen. Colleagues, we are drawing to the end of this webinar. I know that a lot of you would have liked to speak, engage the presenters, but we have run out of time, and I really want to apologize. But this is understandable given the nature the day itself, and also the issues that are being discussed that are of great interest. So the presenters had to spend a bit of time trying to give as much information as possible as we celebrate the Africa Statistics Day. I don't know if there's anyone with a burning issue. I know some questions are in the chat already. I hope that the presenters have been able to respond. But if not, this is a day that will continue to be celebrated by countries starting from the 18th of November. And I know that in some countries actually celebrate this day more than 1 day. Some of them actually even a month to celebrate the Statistics Day because of the value that is attached. So I would like to, as we conclude, to take time. Oh, Adrissa, you are there? Please go ahead. I was just about to close you off. Please,
sorry.
Please go ahead.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Désolé pour ce petit problème d'Internet. Donc, je vais résumer rapidement en disant que au niveau de la phase 2, par exemple, nous avons essayé de mettre en place un programme de collaboration avec l'Institut de recherche agricole du Sénégal, donc l'ISRA, qui un peu s'active sur la recherche agricole et l'analyse des données agricoles. Ceci dans le but de rendre très opérationnelle la formation et un peu d'assurer une certaine pérennité, de pouvoir travailler sur le long terme et même au-delà de la bourse qui est offerte pour cette année, donc pouvoir offrir la formation aux autres cadres statisticiens qui sont en place et qui expriment le besoin de renforcement de capacité. Si on sait qu'il est grand, même ici au Sénégal, en tout cas, il est souvent fait mention des défis d'amélioration au niveau des statistiques agricoles. Donc, voici ce que je voulais dire en résumé. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Adrissa, for that response. I know we sort of rushed you through, but I think you sort of gave us a gist of the issues that you're raising there. As I was just about to say that we've come to the close of this session. We have almost 2 minutes into the beyond the session, but I was asking if there's anyone with a really burning question you could ask, but also you did have the opportunity to put that in the chat, which we appreciate. And that I was saying that you still have an opportunity to engage in your various areas with countries that are also commemorating this particular day. So I want to take time to really thank you for taking this opportunity to engage on a very thoughtful kind of conversation that we've had so far. And I really want to extend this appreciation for the time. And in particular, also our interpreters who have allowed us to speak in one language. I also want to thank you for making this possible. Our partners that have joined us today from FAO, ADB, AUC, and many others that are here, statistical elders, young statisticians that are part of this. I would like to ask that, if you look at the program that you were given, there was a link that was provided. If you could give us your feedback. This is the first time that at ECA we actually have a kickoff of the Africa Statistics Day on the 16th, ahead of the others that are going to be held in the next couple of days, starting from Friday this week. So please do give us a feedback using those links that are there. We've also seen very wonderful presentation that was made by the 4 presenters from FAO, from Adrissa, from the Africa Development Bank, from the FAO, the Ghana Statistical Service, Adrissa and Alexander. Excellent presentation. Those presentations are going to be on the website of the UNECA. Please do have access if you want to look at them. There was a question of the $1 investment. I think we are going to pursue the Ghana Statistical Service to have a really good discussion on this so that we can see the value for an investment into data and what you get out of it. I think that sort of seeks for much more deeper discussion around that. So I hope that you've taken away with something out of this and that you become champions of statistics in your own right, and that really this is something that you want to continue engaging with yourselves going forward to ensure that we are able to attain and give the necessary transformation that is required on the continent to better the lives of the people. So a couple of things that we take away from here, that first of all, agriculture is the bedrock. It's the key for economies on the continent. I think that's all agreed, that a lot more money needed to be invested in statistics, and in particular agriculture statistics, to be able to attain what is required. That's the second one. And the third takeaway really is that I think it's important to begin to invest a little bit more in data, in statistics, statistical literacy, so that people can be able to use the information that's provided in the manner that is required by each of the citizens of this continent. I think data is now an asset. Data is something that becomes a capital. We need to invest into it, just like we invest into roads, invest into schools. That is how we need to invest also in statistics, and that comes out very clearly. So with that, I just want to wish you a very fruitful African Statistics Day celebrations in your respective countries, the regional economic groupings, regionally in whatever form. Please do share with us the videos that you are going, based on the celebration that you're going to have, so that we can also post them on the website, and others can also be able to have access to that. We would like to see various activities that are going to take place in the countries. Share with us so that we can be able to post them on our website for access by everyone that would like to see what's going on the continent as we modernize and transform our national statistical system. So with that, thank you very much, our technical team from ECF. Thank you very much for making this possible. We always value your support, and really we appreciate that. And I hope you'll be able to share with us the recording, because we also want to make sure that the recording, particularly for the minister, is played again and again on the 18th of November as part of the celebration. So all the presenters, the four of you, FAO, Adrissa, Alexander, Professor Anim from Ghana, thank you so much for being part of this. And of course, the minister who was here, the discussant, Professor Ben Chiregera. Please pass our thanks to him for really engaging us in a much more thoughtful discussion. Thank you so much, and have a great day wherever you are. Bye-bye.
Thank you.